Consistent sunshine. There's plenty of it in the United States, especially the Southwest. That's why concentrating solar power, or CSP, is a natural fit for utilities generating clean electricity and for creating clean energy jobs in the U.S. Power towers are one type of CSP system that uses large flat mirrors to reflect sunlight onto a solar receiver at the top of a centrally located tower. Fluid heated in the receiver produces steam, which spins a conventional turbine to generate electricity. In the 1980s and 90s, U.S. Department of Energy projects in California demonstrated that power towers could collect and store heat to generate utility-scale electricity 24 hours a day. And today, power towers continue to build a clean energy economy. In 2009, a modular two-tower system with 24,000 mirrors in the Mojave Desert powers more than 5,000 homes. And in 2010, construction began on a 370-megawatt three-tower system with nearly 175,000 mirrors. This California plant created more than 1,000 jobs and powers more than 350,000 homes. Let's shine some light on the point-focused technology behind power towers. Thousands of mirrors called heliostats reflect sunlight onto a receiver on top of a tower. These computer-controlled mirrors move to maintain this focus from dawn to dusk. In a steam power tower, water is pumped to the receiver, where concentrated thermal energy heats it to over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Some of the superhot steam is stored in a tank, while most is sent to the power block. Here, high-pressure steam spins a conventional turbine to produce electricity. One of CSP's great advantages is that thermal energy can be stored for later use. If a cloud blocks the sun, the steam stored in the tank is used to continue to produce electricity for up to an hour. Another system uses molten salt instead of water. Cold molten salt is pumped to the receiver, where it is heated, then flows to a hot storage tank. The hot salt then flows through a heat exchanger, where heat is transferred to water, producing steam that spins the turbine. The molten salt then flows back to the cold storage tank. In extended cloudy periods or at night, the stored hot salt can continue to produce steam and generate electricity reliably for hours. Today, innovation continues to drive down costs and boost efficiency so power towers can supply utility-scale power, providing dependable, clean electricity to homes, businesses, and communities. Power towers reflect America's shift to a prosperous, clean energy future.
What's that sort of shiny object off in the distance there over a sea of mirrors? That's the first thing you see, the towers from over the mountains, and as you get a little closer, you begin to see a sense of the scale of how it's designed.
3 giant towers and 300,000 mirrors have gone up in California's Mojave Desert, 1 hour south of Las Vegas. The $2.2 billion Ivanpah Solar Project is the largest of its kind in the world. It will be able to produce as much electricity as a medium-sized natural gas plant, but without the carbon emissions.
We selected the Ivanpah site because it had good sun. The better the sun, the more cost-effective the energy is delivered because you can produce more.
Within 200 miles or less of Los Angeles, we have one of the very finest solar resources on the planet. You know, we need to take the carbon out of the world's largest economy and do it in a very short time frame. And large-scale solar in the best locations, like the desert, are going to be important parts of that.
Ivanpah is one of 7 new big solar plants in the state that will be finished by 2014. And solar energy from plants and rooftops will continue to grow. California utilities are rushing to fulfill a state law that requires them to produce 1/3 of their electricity from renewable energy by 2020.
California was among the very first states to adopt a policy that required utilities to buy a certain percentage of their electricity from renewable energy sources. Now 34 states have adopted similar policies.
Unlike the photovoltaic solar panels you find on rooftops and in some solar plants, Ivanpah uses a technology called concentrating solar thermal. Mirrors reflect sunlight and concentrate it onto boilers filled with water on top of 3 towers, each as tall as a 45-story building. The taller the towers, the more mirrors fit on the field. The boiler produces high-pressure steam that powers a turbine at the base of the tower. Just as at any traditional power plant, the turbine produces electricity.
The project itself will, on an annual basis, serve the equivalent of about 140,000 homes.
One of the shortcomings of solar energy is that it's only available when the sun is shining. But systems in place at some solar plants similar to Ivanpah get around this by storing heat in molten salt for later use.
When you add storage, you're essentially making this a power plant just like a natural gas plant, meaning it has the ability to be flexible, controllable, and deliver power when it's most valued and most needed onto the grid.
Ivanpah doesn't include storage, but the first U.S. solar plant with storage started delivering electricity in 2013 in Arizona. Despite the advantages of these large solar plants in the desert, Ivanpah ran into challenges.
From the get-go, we knew that the Ivanpah project was located in an area that had fairly high density of desert tortoise in it.
Worried about habitat disruption, the Center for Biological Diversity out of Los Angeles testified against the project. But construction began in 2010. Desert tortoises are protected under the Endangered Species Act, so the project's developer, BrightSource, based in Oakland, California, asked for a permit to move any tortoises it found on the federal land where it was building the plant.
The initial surveys did not show that there were a lot of desert tortoises.
Surveys conducted during dry years led BrightSource to believe they'd find close to 30 tortoises. But the rains came, and 173 tortoises showed up instead.
We stopped construction in one area of the project. What they did is have us take a pause in the area in which they had located the additional tortoises.
The company transferred the tortoises to pens and later moved them back onto wild land. 53 additional tortoises have been born in captivity.
If you take into account the care and monitoring of all the tortoises involved in the program, it works out to be about $55,000 per tortoise.
I think early on it was a big rush to get projects on the ground. There hadn't been any planning. There hadn't been any large-scale evaluation of the landscape.
In response, more research is taking place and new policies are being adopted. Biologists like Ken Newseer from the U.S. Geological Survey are trying to better understand how development might impact animals like desert tortoises.
Each tortoise has its own channel, and we plug that channel in. So that tortoise is up in this hillside somewhere.
The U.S. Interior Department has identified solar energy zones on public land in 6 southwestern states. These 300,000 acres are close to transmission lines and have fewer threatened species. In California, government agencies and environmental groups are working to identify large tracts in the Mojave Desert suitable for wind and solar plants. This plan would also set aside land for desert species.
We're engaged in that process and very much looking forward to help crafting a good plan that allows for renewable energy development as well as allowing for good, strong conservation to occur.
So this one here is a new burrow. We just put an address here so we can see not only how many times does he use this same exact place, but which other tortoises are using this place. I got a position, here we go. 665, 672.
Around the country, developers, policymakers, and environmentalists are faced with the delicate task of balancing the need for clean energy with the need to protect well-loved landscapes.
There's no such thing as an impact-free energy source. If we're going to deal with climate change, we have to understand that. And if we can choose the locations for these facilities very carefully, we can avoid a lot of the biggest problems.